Hey everyone, Tony D and Little Joan here with your hot take. Last one of the evening, right, Little Joan? High five. High five. With Hunter Biden expose, suppression is a bigger scandal than the actual story. Reporting by Matt Tiabbi on a site called Substack.com. And this is, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read a lot of excerpts from it. Tim Pool already did this. He has a bit of a drill down. But you should read it, and you should follow Matt Taibbi. He's a really good reporter. I actually kind of have a weird connection to him. One of my good friends went to college with Matt Taibbi and recommended me. Oh yeah, my friend writes for Rolling Stone. You should read his article. And I started reading him, and I've been reading him just about ever since, off and on. And yeah, so he's a good guy. He's a good reporter, I think, and he's kind of been driven a little bit more underground. Not totally, because he is a bit of a name. And because this story in particular, this should be front page news at the New York Times. Taibbi should be at the New York Times, top of the heap, or one of them. And this story should be on there. Second only to the actual the actual Hunter Biden scandal itself, which should be being picked apart by Washington Post, New York Times, all these papers. Instead, as Matt Taibbi will tell you, they're trying to obfuscate it as much as possible. So let's read a little bit. The incredible decision by Twitter and Facebook to block access to a New York Post story about a cache of emails reportedly belonging to Democratic nominee Joe Biden's son Hunter, with Twitter going so far as to lock the 200-year-old newspaper out of its own account for over a week, continues to be a major underreported scandal. The hypocrisy is mind-boggling. Imagine the reaction if the same set of facts involved the New York Times and any of its multitudinous, unverifiable exposés, quote unquote, from the last half decade. From the similarly leaked Black Ledger story implicating Paul Manafort to its later debunked, quote, repeated contacts with Russian intelligence story to its mountain of articles about the far more dubious Steele dossier, internet platforms for years have balked at intervening at many other sensational, unverified stories, including ones called into question in very short order. Yeah. And I think that's because they are fine with these stories when they hurt Republicans, but when they hurt Democrats, suddenly, well, I don't know about that story. It may be unverified. I mean, really? I don't think so. So, try to look up anything about Burisma, says Taibbi. Joe Biden, Hunter Biden in English, however, and you're likely to be shown a pile of, quote, fact checks and explainers ahead of the raw information. And here's one of the Google searches right here. When you search for Biden Ukraine billion aid, fact check, correcting a media error, fact check, what happened when Biden forced out Ukrainian's top prosecutor, White House, Joe Biden, if the prosecutors had not fired, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, this happened to me when I was trying to find videos from my previous video clip show, my little news bit. I was trying to find that clip from OAN. I couldn't find it. It's not on Google. I just switched over to DuckDuckGo, by the way. That's a different search engine. It looks like this. Here, I was searching myself. Yeah. Look, I like to do that. Oh, it's got some of my stuff here. Oh, look. Tony DiGerolamo's Travelers 1 to 25 complete series. $100 on eBay. $9.99. Look at that. Somebody's got every single issue. Good for you. Oh, and it's signed. Wow. That's nice. And looks like it has Complete Mafia for D20. Look at that, Joan. Isn't that nice? And this is on DuckDuckGo. Google, I think they're gaming the system. And not just for political stuff. I think political stuff is the beginning. Slowly, it'll trickle down to other less important things, quote unquote. But continuing with Taibbi's information, he goes through and he talks about, well, here, I'll read this bit. Other true information has been scrubbed or deranked, either by platforms or by a confederation of press outlets whose loyalty to the Democratic Party far now overshadows its obligations to inform. Yeah, And he talks a little bit about Fox, but even Fox is compromised. Um, and they talk, and Matt Taibbi, and he does not like Trump. He is not a Trump guy. He's been lefty for a long time. He's very much a liberal, very much a liberal. So the idea that he's doing this just to, slam the Democrats or something is preposterous. It's absolutely preposterous. What happens a month from now when an ambitious Republican like Tom Cotton leaks a document damaging to President-elect Biden? Or 2 years from now, if in weeks before midterm elections we get a bad economic news or a Biden-Harris administration foreign policy initiative takes a turn for the worse? Are we sure those stories will be run? No. And this has already been happening. The media ran a cover for Obama, and now it's just made that cover more sophisticated. It's sharpening its knives, and it's getting better at keeping certain blocks of the population uninformed. And some of these people work in media. And so a lot of these media people, at least on the lower end, they totally believe this. They totally believe the stuff coming down the wire. It's why so many people are out in the street mad, these college students, because they don't have the wherewithal to go, wait a minute, could I be being lied to? Is this all a big setup? Is this all a big show for me and the public? Yes. The Republican version of the Burisma story, I'm just going to wrap it up at the end here. The Republican version of the Burisma story, essentially that former general prosecutor Victor Shokin was Elliot Ness and Joe Biden intervened to fire him, specifically to aid his son's company, is also not supported by evidence. What Trump and lawyer Rudy Giuliani and his cohorts have done to date is take a few unreported or underreported facts and leap straight to a maximalist interpretation of corruption on Joe Biden's part. Oh, that's what I did, and I believe it. This isn't right, but the room to make that argument has been created by the ongoing squelching of information coming from the Ukraine. The suppression story is almost certainly a bigger scandal than Hunter Biden affair itself, but it's all become part of the same picture. As I learned from sources in the Ukraine this week, the biggest misconception has to do with the question of whether or not investigations of Burisma were ongoing at the time of Joe Biden's intervention in 2015. Now, this is an excerpt from a subscriber-only post. To read the entire post, to get full access to the archives, you can subscribe for $5 a month or $50 a year, and that is at Substack. But I'll end with my own little conspiracy theory, and this is totally speculation on my part. Back in the 60s and 70s, there was real reporting done. And during that time, the CIA started Operation Mockingbird because they concluded that part of the reason they couldn't do all the things they wanted to do was they were being stopped by the American press. Somebody would find out, a leak would happen, and it would get back to the newspapers, and then the public would be outraged, and they call Congress, and Congress would call the CIA in and be like, what the hell are you guys doing? Well, the CIA concluded rightly that, well, the problem is we got to keep the press from getting this story. Then we won't get called in front of Congress, and then we won't lose our money, and we could do what we want. So Operation Mockingbird was a plan to infiltrate every newspaper, every TV station, and every news point to control it. At least enough so certain stories would get muddied or knocked off the front page. Now, did it work? I don't think it totally could work. I think it's too big of a ambitious plan, but certainly it must have had influence. And on certain things it probably worked really well, maybe things we don't even know about. But sometime in the 70s, the Congress got wind of it, and they banned the CIA from doing it anymore. They made it illegal, essentially. But the CIA does lots of stuff that's illegal, and they're not exactly known for telling the truth. So my theory is, for a few years, the CIA pulled away from that, not really cutting off all its ties, but kind of keeping a very sort of low-key version. And then they came up probably with a workaround so they could continue to kind of influence the media. Because when you look at the media today, look how many CIA guys get trotted out. I mean, you got Brenner and Clapper and Comey, and these guys are in that world, and they're on TV whenever they want to be. So imagine they came up with, if they came up with that idea, imagine the next step. The next step would have been, well, if we just had control of some of Congress, we could stop this thing. And then maybe they said, well, maybe we need to go further. Maybe we need control of one of the political parties, because it wouldn't be enough just to take control of a few people in Congress, because they come and go, but the real power's in the parties. So why not get our grubby mitts on that? So maybe the CIA or deep state or whatever you want to call these forces, again, not a real cabal, more like Antifa, more like an oppressive version of Antifa. Various groups kind of overlapping, working towards similar goals, said, well, we need to get the Congress on board with certain things we're doing. Maybe it's the military-industrial complex. Maybe it's just a kind of an aspect of it. And they get together and they say, well, we gotta pull together, a party. And maybe they tried that with the Republicans and they kind of essed the bed, and they had sort of control with it for a while, but what they really needed were people who were so compromised, so unbelievably beholden to them, that they couldn't help but obey. And this is where I go full conspiracy theory, so stick with me. So look at Epstein's Island, right? Epstein's blackmailing people left and right for someone. Yeah, sure, he kept it to himself, but he could just keep blackmailing people for straight up money, but that's like godlike power in this day and age. He can't possibly keep that to himself. No way. Now, there's rumors that the Mossad had their hands in that. Why not the CIA? Why not the American intelligence community? Why wouldn't they be a part of that? It's the perfect situation. The people caught up in Epstein's deal would be owned by him. Absolutely owned. They couldn't help but obey him. The choice would be, okay, you're going to wreck your career here. You're going to go up on TV and you're going to support this war, or you're going to support this horrible policy. Oh, no, I can't do that. My career will be ruined. Or I'm going to tell everybody you had sex with the underage girls. Which one would you pick? I think it's pretty clear. One, your career's ruined, but maybe you get to keep your money. Maybe somehow you figure out a way to survive. The other one, you go to jail. Like prison jail. Bad jail. The worst jail ever. Probably to be killed by other prisoners when they find out what you did. They own people. They own them, and it's not QAnon satanic rituals or anything like that. It's about owning people to the point in which they will 100% obey their handlers. They cannot help but obey their handlers. Your choice is obey us, or your life will be absolutely destroyed. Destroyed. Not like you're going to lose your career, destroyed, but you will lose everything and die in prison. Horribly. That's power. Look at the behavior of Hunter Biden. Tell me that guy's not a prime candidate for this. If any of this stuff is to be believed. Joe Biden. Maybe same thing. Compromise everybody. Control them. And then do whatever you want with them. The Burisma thing was tied in to what the intelligence community wanted to do. Excuse me. They wanted to F the Russians on an energy deal. That was bigger than anything. And if they controlled that through a guy like Hunter Biden, he's the perfect patsy. If he's caught, he falls to pieces in his own sleaze, drowns in his own wackiness. He's never going to be traced back to the people who perpetuated this. And really, it's already over with. They've already beat the Russians in that score. So they don't need him anymore. So let him suffer. He probably doesn't even know he's a tool. This is about moving pieces of a big chessboard. Maybe. I'm just speculating. But I think the media's manipulation is part of that. You would need to manipulate the media. And now it's kind of gone too far. Now they're manipulating it so well. They've manipulated it to the point at which people are balking. It's become too routine. And the kind of people that you can, get to do this aren't reliable. They're weak. Matt Taibbi is strong. He's a guy who can't be manipulated like this. He's too smart. He always has been, if you followed his work. But these other people, they're weak. And that's the kind of people who are doing most of the reporting. So they're fine as long as they get to keep their house in the Hamptons, like Chris Cuomo, and their fabulous wealth, and they get to go out to fancy places and meet celebrities. What do they care if they lie? Somebody else is going to do it, right? It's tough to be good. It's super tough in the world of news media. But follow Matt Taibbi wherever he goes, because he'll tell you the truth.